I don't usually get worked up over small things. I've always been the type to shrug, brush it off, move on. Life's too short, right? But sometimes, someone crosses a line so smugly, so intentionally, that you can practically hear the universe whispering. You gonna let them get away with that? My name's Jason. I'm 27, work in digital marketing, and for the most part, I try to stay out of family drama. I live about an hour away from my parents, in a small but cozy apartment that I keep cleaner than anyone else in the family thinks is normal. My sister, Hannah, is 25 and lives with our parents still, by choice, not necessity. She always had a knack for dodging responsibility. Funny thing is, growing up, everyone treated her like a delicate glass sculpture and me like the backup plan. She could do no wrong, even when she obviously did. And me? I could bring home a scholarship, clean the entire garage, and cook dinner, and the best I'd get was a, "That's what you're supposed to do." Typical, right? Our family dynamic has always been complicated. My parents are old school. My dad worked in construction his whole life and values grit and not whining about things, while my mom was the type who would iron socks and lecture you about posture. We weren't a hug-it-out family. Feelings were for holidays and Hallmark cards. Still, I made peace with it all until Hannah started dating Kyle. Kyle was the kind of guy who walked into a room and immediately started sucking up all the air. He talked too loud, laughed too hard at his own jokes, and always made sure the conversation circled back to him. You know the type. Wore expensive watches he didn't buy himself, called people bro, even when he was mad, and acted like every moment was a scene from some movie where he was the star. I tolerated him at first, mostly for Hannah's sake. But over time, it became clear Kyle thought of himself as part of the family, and more importantly, thought of me as less than. I'll never forget the first time I saw that smirk of his. It was last Christmas. My mom had invited everyone over, me, Hannah, Kyle, a couple of cousins, and insisted we do the whole sit-down dinner thing like we used to when we were kids. I arrived with a bottle of wine and a store-bought pecan pie because I knew better than to show up empty-handed. Kyle, on the other hand, showed up late, empty-handed, and somehow still got the best seat at the table. I was in the kitchen helping my mom plate the mashed potatoes when I heard him say, "Hey, Jason, you don't mind sitting at the kids' table, right?" I thought he was joking, so I laughed. He didn't. Neither did anyone else. My mom looked at the floor. My dad cleared his throat. I sat at the fold-out table by the window. That night should have been my warning sign. Over the next few months, Kyle started showing up to more family events. Birthdays, Sunday dinners, even my dad's 60th, which was supposed to be a low-key guy's barbecue. Kyle arrived wearing loafers and aviators, brought a Bluetooth speaker blasting 2000s rap, and started calling the neighbors legends. Everyone laughed, except me. My dad even clapped him on the back and said, "You're all right, kid." That stung more than I wanted to admit. Because no matter how hard I tried growing up, that kind of casual approval never came my way. But the real breaking point? That came a few weeks ago. My mom had planned a small dinner at a downtown Italian place she liked. Nothing fancy, but nicer than our usual family outings. She wanted to celebrate Hannah getting a part-time gig at some boutique marketing agency. "It's just a trial period," Hannah had told the family group chat. But apparently, that still warranted a reservation, dress code, and family applause. I was genuinely happy for her. I know how hard it can be to break into the industry, especially when you don't have much work ethic. But I kept that part to myself. I RSVP'd, showed up 10 minutes early, and brought her a bouquet of daisies. She always loved daisies. The restaurant was cozy, all warm lighting and vintage decor. Our table was in the corner near a fake fireplace, already half filled when I got there. My parents were seated together, and 2 empty seats were left, one next to them and one across, by the window. I placed the flowers in front of Hannah's chair and went to slide into the spot next to my mom. That's when I felt the hand on my shoulder. "Hey, freeloaders don't get the best seats," Kyle said, chuckling like we were old pals. He slid right into the seat I was about to take, leaned back, and gave me that same smug smirk he wore like a second skin. I blinked. "Freeloader, you didn't bring anything," he said, gesturing at the empty table like I was supposed to show up with a roast pig or something. "Just messing with you, man. Take the one over there." I looked around. The only open seat was across the room, near the bar. Still technically part of the restaurant, but not part of the table. Like an annex for overflow guests. No one else seemed to think anything was wrong. My mom busied herself adjusting the napkins. My dad checked the menu. Hannah looked away, fiddling with her phone. Something inside me cracked a little. I didn't argue, didn't make a scene. I just nodded, walked over to the barside table, and sat down. The waiter came by a minute later with water and menus. He looked confused, glancing between me and the group. "You with them?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, flipping the menu open. "But I'll be eating here tonight." That's when I got the idea. A little spark at the back of my mind. Nothing explosive, just a flicker of heat. A reminder that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe gives you a chance to speak a little louder. To say, no more. I skimmed the menu slowly. Appetizers. Entrees. Wine list. The works. My mom glanced over once, but didn't say anything. Kyle laughed at something my dad said. Hannah took a selfie. And me? I placed my order. The waiter's eyebrows shot up as I listed item after item. The truffle risotto, the imported wine, the lobster, the creme brulee. He hesitated at first, asking if I was sure. I smiled. Yep. And see that guy? I pointed casually at Kyle, who was now mid-sip of his beer, completely oblivious. He's covering it. The waiter paused. All of it. Every last bite, I said, folding the menu shut. He nodded slowly, scribbled down the last item, and walked away. And me? I sat back and waited. Not just for the food, but for the storm. Because sometimes, you don't need to raise your voice to make a point. Sometimes, all it takes is a quiet seat, a smug smirk, and a $3,000 bill. But the night was far from over. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Kyle had a plan of his own. And things were about to get a whole lot messier. I didn't touch my phone for most of that dinner. Just sat there, swishing wine in a glass that cost more than my utility bill and letting the conversations drift over me like elevator music. I watched Kyle hold court like he was born to be there, arms draped across the back of Hannah's chair, laughing at his own jokes, tossing smug glances in my direction as if I were the hired help. I waited, biting down my irritation like it was a piece of stale bread. Then came the moment I was really waiting for. The bill. The waiter, bless his soul, was as professional as they come. He returned with a small flourish and placed the check squarely in front of Kyle, just as I'd asked. Kyle blinked, confused at first, then looked around the table like someone had just handed him a baby and told him it was his. My mother frowned. My father raised a brow. Hannah was still in selfie mode. "What's this?" Kyle asked, flipping it open. He went pale. He did a double take, looked at me, then back at the waiter. "There's been a mistake," he said, finger jabbing at the paper. "I didn't order all this." The waiter didn't flinch. "Sir, the gentleman at the bar pointed to you and said you were covering his bill." Kyle's mouth opened, but for a moment, no words came out. Just this awkward little wheeze, like someone had knocked the wind out of him. Then he laughed. That forced, too loud laugh that insecure people use when they're hoping someone else will save them. "He's kidding, right? Jason, you're joking." I stared him down. "No joke." He looked at Hannah like she might jump in. She didn't. Instead, she turned to me, her brows pinched like I had just ruined the family photo. "Seriously, Jason? That's so petty. It was one seat." "Yeah," I said slowly, savoring the taste of the words. "And I found another one. But apparently, I'm the freeloader." My dad made a noise like he was about to say something, but then my mom cut in with a sharp, "This is ridiculous." She turned to the waiter. "We're not paying that. Take it off the bill." The waiter cleared his throat and stood firm. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it's already been submitted. We don't split individual bills here." The guest confirmed Mr. Kyle was covering the tab. "If there's an issue, I suggest settling it among yourselves before we proceed further." Kyle was fuming. "I'm not paying $3,000 for some overcooked lobster. Truffle risotto, too," I reminded him. "And the wine. Don't forget dessert." He shoved the bill toward my parents like a kid who just got a detention slip. "I'm not paying this. You guys invited me." He set me up. There it was. The mask slipping. Hannah finally spoke, but not in the way I expected. "Jason, you owe him an apology. This is completely over the line. You made your point, okay? You embarrassed him. You embarrassed us." Something in me cracked, and it wasn't small this time. It wasn't a flicker. It was a full-on fracture. Because there it was, the default setting. I caused the problem. I embarrassed them. Not Kyle for calling me a freeloader. Not the family for letting it slide. Me. I stood up slowly. "You know what? Forget the money. I'll pay it." I'll pay every cent. But I'm done. I'm done pretending like this dynamic is normal. Like I'm the one always making things uncomfortable just because I won't roll over and laugh at Kyle's garbage jokes. My dad stood too, looking annoyed. That's enough, Jason. I turned to him. Is it? Because it seems like every time Kyle disrespects me, you all just laugh or look the other way. But I pushed back once, and suddenly I'm the bad guy. Nobody said anything. The silence was more telling than anything they could have said. I paid the bill, left the waiter a tip so big he did a double take. And then I walked out. No dramatic exit. No slamming doors. Just me and the soft tap of my shoes on the pavement. But that wasn't the end of it. That was just the match being lit. What happened next is what really made it personal. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. I didn't hear from Hannah. Didn't get a passive-aggressive text from Mom. No cryptic forwarded emails from Dad about forgiveness or letting things go. I figured maybe the message landed. Maybe they were letting it sink in. Or maybe they were just nursing bruised egos. Either way, I didn't reach out. Then came the betrayal. It was a Sunday afternoon. I just finished a jog, sweating and sore, when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I let it ring, but something told me to answer. Hello. Hi. Is this Jason Turner? Yeah. Who's this? This is Karen from Westerly Credit Union. I just wanted to confirm a recent transaction request on your account. We received a call this morning requesting to add a cosigner to your personal checking account. Someone named Hannah Turner. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. I'm sorry, what? The woman on the line sounded calm, robotic. Yes, a request was made to add a co-owner to your account ending in 7285. We paused the process to verify, as this is an unusual request. My heart dropped into my stomach. I never authorized that. I assumed as much. The caller had some of your information, but failed to verify one of the security questions. I've placed a hold on the request and flagged your account for monitoring. You might want to change your password and consider placing a fraud alert. I ended the call in a daze. My fingers were already moving, logging into my account, checking balances, freezing cards. Everything was still there, for now. But the fact that someone even tried? I knew exactly who. Hannah. And probably Kyle's idea. I sat down on a park bench, still breathing heavy from the run and now from the rush of betrayal. I thought about the family dinners, the awkward silences, the looks that passed like cold wind when I dared to speak up. I thought about all the times I'd been told to just get along, don't rock the boat, be the bigger person. And I realized something I should have seen a long time ago. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a backup wallet. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to be sure. So I waited. I checked my email. I called the bank again, asked for a transcript of the request. Sure enough, they had a recording. A high-pitched voice pretending to sound professional, stumbling over my middle name. I'd recognize that voice anywhere. I had my proof. But it wasn't just about the bank. It was what came next that really drove the nail in. A few days later, my mom called. Her voice was tight, clipped, like she was holding something back. Jason, your sister told me you're being difficult. Is that what she said? She said you overreacted at dinner, that you embarrassed her in front of Kyle, and now you're making up stories to get back at her. My jaw clenched. Did she tell you she tried to fraudulently access my bank account? A pause. She said it was a misunderstanding. She thought it was a shared savings account Dad opened years ago. That's a lie. She said you'd understand if you weren't so emotional all the time. There it was again. The deflection. The gaslighting. Like I was the problem. Like I was somehow overreacting to identity theft. I felt the heat rise in my chest. But I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, you believe her over me. Again. My mom didn't respond. So I hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time after that. Thought about all the birthdays I'd paid for. The time I bailed Hannah out of a late rent situation. The family vacations where I footed the hotel bill because Dad's card didn't go through. I remembered the time I lent Kyle money for new tires because he couldn't afford the good ones and never saw a cent back. And I finally understood what they saw when they looked at me. Not a son, not a brother, a bank, a backup plan, an ATM with a pulse. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't angry. I was done. Done being quiet. Done letting things slide. Done playing the role of the mature one while they walked all over me. They thought the $3,000 bill was revenge. They hadn't seen anything yet. Because I had a plan now. One they'd never see coming. And it started with an invitation they couldn't resist. But that part, that's where things really start to unravel. I wish I could say I woke up the next day with some master plan already in motion, fueled by righteous anger and an unshakable sense of purpose. But that's not what happened. What actually happened was, I crashed. Hard. After the call with my mom, I shut my phone off. Not silenced, off. Threw it into my kitchen drawer like it was radioactive. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I slept for 14 hours straight. No dreams. No alarms. Just darkness. When I woke up, it was still dark outside. My apartment was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful, but heavy. Like the air was filled with invisible weight pressing down on everything. Dishes from the night before sat in the sink. My shoes were still by the door, caked with dried mud. The half-eaten sandwich on my counter had gone stiff. And me? I stood in the middle of my living room, not really knowing what to do next. I felt empty, not angry, not sad, just hollow. And here's the thing. Hitting rock bottom isn't like they show it in the movies. There's no dramatic breakdown, no shouting into the void, no rain pouring outside the window as you weep into a half-empty bottle of wine. Sometimes, it's just sitting alone at your kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee you forgot to drink, realizing you have no one left to call. No one who really sees you. That was the first time I ever admitted it to myself. I didn't have a real family. I had a collection of people I shared blood with. People who loved the version of me that stayed quiet, contributed financially, and didn't ask for anything back. But the moment I pushed back, the moment I set a boundary, they called me emotional, petty, difficult. That realization, that was the real bottom. For a while, I drifted. I went to work, did what I had to, came home, microwaved frozen meals, and watched reruns of shows I didn't even like anymore. I didn't answer texts. I skipped calls. When my cousin Mark invited me to his wedding, I declined without reading the invite. I even ignored my birthday. No one remembered it anyway, not even Hannah. But sometimes, when everything else falls away, what's left is truth. And that truth slowly started to become my foundation. It started small. One Sunday morning, I opened the blinds. I hadn't done that in weeks. The sunlight stung my eyes, but I let it in anyway. Then I cleaned. Like really cleaned. Scrubbed the sink, vacuumed the rug, tossed out everything in my fridge that had expired. It wasn't much, but it felt like a restart. Next, I bought a new notebook. Just a plain black Moleskine. I wrote on the first page, "What do I want?" It stared back at me like a challenge. At first, the answers were simple. Peace. Respect. Freedom from guilt. But the more I wrote, the more it evolved. I want a circle of people who actually give a damn. I want to stop apologizing for existing. I want to build something of my own. And maybe the most important one, I want to never need them again. That became my mantra. I started waking up early. Not for work, but for me. I'd go on long walks, listen to podcasts that didn't tell me to grind harder, but instead asked better questions. I started journaling every night. Started cooking again. Real meals, not frozen trays. I signed up for a fitness class, too. Something light. Just to remind myself that my body existed and that it deserved care. I also cut off all auto payments and stopped sending money to Hannah's old Venmo account. No explanation. Just turned off the faucet. If they wanted to see me as a wallet, they'd now realize I had a log out button. Work became a strange kind of sanctuary. I used to see it as something I did to pay the bills. But now, it was structure, purpose, something no one could take from me. My boss noticed the change, said I seemed more focused, more grounded. I didn't explain why. I just thanked her and asked for more responsibility. 3 months later, I got promoted. Not huge money, but enough to move out of my one bedroom and into a corner unit with better light. I didn't tell anyone in my family. Not because I was hiding it, because for once, I didn't need their approval to validate a win. And then, one day, something shifted. I was out grocery shopping, wearing earbuds, halfway through a podcast on emotional boundaries, when someone tapped my shoulder. It was Kyle. My entire body stiffened. He looked the same. Too much cologne, expensive jacket, hair slicked back like he was auditioning for a bad soap opera. But something about him was off. He looked nervous, sweaty, like he hadn't slept. "Jason," he said, giving me this awkward half-smile. "Man, hey, didn't expect to run into you." I said nothing, just stared. He cleared his throat. "Listen, can we talk?" "About what?" "Just stuff. Look, I know things got out of hand. I wasn't trying to. To what? I interrupted, voice calm. To get access to my bank account? To call me a freeloader while eating food I paid for? To lie to my family about me being emotional while you tried to commit fraud? He flinched. Okay. Look, I messed up, all right? I thought you'd be okay with it. I thought we were cool. Cool. That word again. That casual dismissal of accountability. That attempt to wrap a grenade in bubble wrap and call it a party favor. We're not cool, Kyle. We never were. He looked around like someone might rescue him. Hannah's mad at me, he said quietly. Says I embarrassed her. That I ruined her relationship with Mom. That none of this was worth it. I stared him down. So why are you really here? He hesitated, then shrugged. I guess I was hoping you'd, I don't know, talk to her? Help smooth things over. You're her brother. The irony almost made me laugh. I was her brother, I said. But apparently, that wasn't enough. He opened his mouth to reply, but I was already walking away. I didn't know him a single syllable more. That night, I found myself sitting at my desk, staring at the notebook again. What do I want? I flipped to a fresh page. What do I deserve? The answers came faster this time. Peace, truth, respect without begging for it. A life that isn't dictated by guilt. And that's when the final piece clicked into place. Not revenge, not petty payback, but something bigger, something permanent. A shift. I realized I had spent so much of my life trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided it didn't exist. That if I just worked harder, paid more, stayed quieter, they'd see me. But they didn't want to see me. They wanted to use me. And now that I'd walked away, they were scrambling. Not out of love, but out of loss, of control, of convenience, of access. And you know what? Good. Let them scramble. Because I was done proving anything. I was building something now. Quietly. Carefully. And soon, they'd see just how much they'd underestimated me. But first, I had one more invitation to send out. One that would look innocent enough. A birthday dinner. All of them, in one place. Kyle. Hannah. My parents. A make amends gesture. That's what they'd think. But really? It would be the final act in a play they didn't even know they were starring in. Because the table was set. And this time, the seat they slid into wouldn't be theirs to claim. Invitations can be dangerous things. One simple message, 12 words, to be exact, set the entire plan in motion. Dinner next Saturday. My treat. No drama this time, I promise. Jason. That was it. I sent it through the family group chat that had been collecting dust for months. I didn't expect replies, not immediately. But within 20 minutes, my mom responded with a passive, let's hope it goes better than last time. Hannah followed with a thumbs-up emoji. My dad, predictably, sent a K. And Kyle heart reacted the message, then followed up with looking forward to it, bro. The nerve of that guy. But that was good. I wanted them relaxed. I wanted them smug. I wanted them thinking I'd come crawling back, tail between my legs, ready to beg for forgiveness and be the bigger man again. That was their pattern. Create chaos, make it my fault, then wait for me to fix it. Not this time. This time, I wasn't their doormat. I was the floor plan. From the outside, it would look like a nice little family dinner. A reunion. A bridge being rebuilt. But in reality, it was an ambush. A reckoning. Carefully planned, meticulously staged, and long overdue. The restaurant I chose was no accident. Devereux, an upscale French place tucked behind the art district downtown. Expensive, elegant, intimate. A place you booked weeks in advance. The kind of place where waiters wore white gloves and pronounced the menu items with a softness that made you feel underdressed no matter how well you tried. I'd done some marketing consulting for them last year. Helped them rebrand their socials and optimize their site for local search. In return, I had a standing relationship with the owner, Marcel, a soft-spoken culinary artist with a sharp memory and sharper sense of justice. When I called him and explained what I needed, private room, custom service, a bit of theatrics, he didn't even hesitate. Ah, he said in his warm French accent. A family affair, yes? Something like that. You want them to remember this night. Exactly. I will prepare a menu they cannot forget. He paused, then chuckled. And, of course, the bill they will never live down. Perfect. Over the next few days, I worked silently, methodically. While they probably assumed I was folding napkins and rehearsing apologies, I was calling in favors, scheduling meetings, laying track for a train they wouldn't see coming until it was too late. The first person I called was Michelle. Michelle and I had worked together years ago, back when I was still cutting my teeth at an old agency. She was sharp, no nonsense, and had since become a legal consultant for a firm downtown. She'd always been kind to me. Smart too. The kind of person who could read a contract and instantly spot a hidden clause like a hawk spotting prey in a field. I told her everything. About the bank account incident, the fraud attempt, the manipulation. She listened without interrupting, then said, "You should have come to me sooner." "I know," I admitted, "but I didn't want it to be real. Not until it was." She offered to pull Hannah's financial records. I didn't even ask. She volunteered. Turns out, she had access through a public investigation database. She couldn't get everything, but what she did find was illuminating. A series of credit card payments traced to an account under my name. Except I never opened that account. There it was, proof that Kyle and Hannah had used my information to sign up for a joint credit line at some point last year. Small charges at first. A few Amazon purchases. Gas stations. But then bigger ones. Hotel stays. Flights. All without my consent. The moment I saw it, something inside me locked into place. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't accidental access or a misunderstanding about old accounts. This was theft. This was identity fraud. This was betrayal written in $signs. Michelle helped me draft a cease and desist letter. Legally sound. Cold. Impersonal. The kind of document that made you sit up straight when you read it. She said we could serve it at the dinner if I wanted to really drive the point home. I said yes. Next, I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year, my cousin Nick. Nick had always been the black sheep of the family. Rebellious, a little too sarcastic, and unfiltered to the point of getting himself uninvited to a few holidays. But he'd always had my back. We used to joke that we were the benchwarmers of the family. Useful when needed, ignored when not. When I told him what happened, he didn't even hesitate. "Bro, I've been waiting for an excuse to watch those clowns squirm." I invited him to the dinner, told him to dress sharp, act polite, and keep his phone ready. His job would be simple, document everything. I had a seat reserved for him at a nearby table in the same private room, disguised as a solo guest. No one would even recognize him at first. But when the time came, he'd make his presence known, and the footage. That was going to be for insurance. Literally. Speaking of insurance, I also contacted my financial advisor and flagged all recent activity on my accounts. Changed passwords. Locked down my credit reports. I even opened a new bank account, this time with dual authentication and in-person only access for major changes. Just knowing that they couldn't touch my finances anymore gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in months. By Friday, everything was ready. The dinner was scheduled for 6:30 p.m. Saturday. Marcel had set aside the private room with the grand piano, gold-accented tableware, and fresh-cut orchids at each place setting. A little over the top? Maybe. But I wanted the scene to feel like something out of a movie. Because honestly, it was. I picked out a charcoal gray suit, pressed and tailored. Shaved. Trimmed my beard. Looked in the mirror for a long time before heading out. I looked different. Not just sharper, stronger. More solid. Like I'd finally stepped into the version of myself I'd always been told to suppress. And as I buttoned the last clasp on my coat, I whispered something to my reflection. "Let them think you're here to forgive." Then I smiled. Because that's what'll make it hurt more. I arrived 15 minutes early. Nick was already at his table, pretending to study the wine list. He gave me a small nod. Marcel greeted me personally. "Your guests will arrive shortly. Everything is ready." "Thank you," I said. "One more thing. Can you make sure the bill is brought before dessert?" He grinned. "Of course." 6:28 p.m., my parents arrived first. My dad was in his usual sports coat, the one he wore to funerals, weddings, and now apparently my trap. My mom had on her pearls. She gave me a tight-lipped smile like she was already bracing for emotional impact. "Jason," she said, pulling me in for a hug that lasted 1 second too long and meant nothing at all. "So glad you finally came to your senses." I just smiled. "Let's sit." Kyle and Hannah strolled in 2 minutes later, hand in hand. She was dressed like she was on her way to an awards show. He wore a white blazer and that same insufferable smirk. Kyle clapped me on the back like we were frat brothers. "Now this is more like it. See, I knew you'd come around." I gestured to the seats. "Please, let's enjoy the evening." The meal began smoothly. Too smoothly. Small talk. Awkward laughter. They talked about trivial things. Work, local news, some new cafe my mom liked. Kyle bragged about a marketing project he was consulting on, which probably meant he was reposting Instagram stories. My dad grunted agreement every few sentences like he was a sentient nod. I played along, laughed when appropriate, complimented the food, made eye contact. I let them all believe I was back in the fold, until the waiter placed down a single white envelope. Not the check. Not yet. This one was for Hannah. She picked it up with confusion. What's this? Just something I wanted you to see, I said casually, sipping my wine. She opened it. Her face paled in real time. The cease and desist letter. Signed. Dated. Attached with an official notice from Michelle's firm, outlining the discovery of fraud, including specific dates and dollar amounts linked to the credit card she opened in my name. My mother blinked. What is that? Hannah tried to speak, but Kyle leaned over and read it upside down. His smile faltered, then vanished. What is this? He hissed, voice low. Paperwork, I said, outlining exactly how you two used my identity to fund vacations, shopping sprees, and whatever else you thought you could hide. Hannah slammed the letter on the table. Jason, what is this crap? You invited us here to ambush us. No, I said calmly. I invited you here to give you a choice. Everyone fell silent. Even my dad. A choice between admitting what you did, making it right, and facing consequences like adults, or continuing to lie, in which case, this becomes a legal matter. Kyle stood up. You've got nothing. You can't prove. I tapped my phone and played the audio file. The recording of the bank call. Hannah's voice. Hesitating. Failing to answer a security question. The entire attempt laid bare for all to hear. She froze. And just as my father started to sputter something, probably another deflection, another call to let this go, the waiter appeared again. With the check. $3,462. Kyle blinked at it. Hannah was still in shock. My mom whispered, This is insane. I leaned back. No, this is closure. But we weren't done yet. Not even close. Because what came next? That was the final straw. The real betrayal. The final unraveling. And I wasn't the only one holding cards at this table. They say revenge is best served cold, but I disagree. Revenge should be served warm. Just warm enough for everyone at the table to feel it in their gut. Kyle was the first to speak after the audio played. I don't remember making that call, he said, too quickly. That could be anyone. The words were hollow. Weak. Desperate. He looked around for backup, from Hannah, from my parents, but none came. Hannah looked stunned, her mouth slightly open. My mom seemed frozen, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. My dad, he just looked tired, like this was the first time he'd seen the house he helped build starting to crumble. I looked straight at Hannah. You said I was emotional. Petty. That I embarrassed you. But I never lied. I never stole. I never used you to fund my life. She didn't respond. Not a word. And that's when Nick stood up from his table. I had almost forgotten he was there, lurking behind a linen napkin and a glass of wine. His phone was still recording. Hope you don't mind, he said casually. Thought someone should capture the moment for posterity. Kyle's eyes widened. You recorded this? Nick smirked. Wouldn't you? Identity theft, fraud, deception. I mean, if this were a reality show, you'd be the villain everyone loves to hate. Delete it. Hannah finally snapped, her voice cracking. This is private. Actually, Nick said, your brother invited me. I'm part of the guest list. And legally, in this state, only one-party consent is needed. Which means this is perfectly within the law. Hannah looked like she might leap across the table, but she didn't. Not with Marcel standing silently in the corner, arms folded, eyes locked on her like a disappointed maitre d', watching someone chew with their mouth open. Kyle threw his napkin onto the plate. This is bull. You lured us here under false pretenses. You wanted to make us look bad. No, I said, standing slowly. You made yourselves look bad. I just let the truth do its job. Then I took out 2 more envelopes from my inside coat pocket and slid them across the table, one to my parents and one back to Hannah. What's this now? My dad asked warily, not opening his. Boundaries, I said. Written and notarized. My mom blinked. Excuse me. Power of attorney revoked. Emergency contacts updated. Access to any joint accounts closed. I've even removed you both from my healthcare directives. Hannah's jaw dropped. You can't. I just did. My dad looked like he wanted to protest, to puff his chest and assert his authority like he used to when I was 12. But all that came out was a sigh, deep and weathered. Maybe he knew this was the end. Or maybe he'd just run out of defenses. And then, finally, came the bill. Marcel returned with a silver tray. The check nestled atop it like a relic of war. Kyle picked it up, expecting, I could see it in his face, for it to be a joke. A flex. A power play. But when he read the total, $3,462.79, his face turned to stone. You're insane. Funny, I said. That's what you called me when you tried to make me sit across the room like some servant. That's what you called me when you stole from me. Kyle shoved the bill toward me. I'm not paying this. I didn't ask you to. Then why is it addressed to me? Because last time, you said I was a freeloader. So I figured you'd be proud to foot the bill. But don't worry, I already paid. He froze. Wait, what? I pulled the receipt from my coat pocket and unfolded it slowly, laying it on the table like an ace at the end of a poker game. His name had been written on the original bill. Yes, but mine was on the payment receipt. You paid it? Oh yeah, I said. I always intended to. But not before giving you the chance to do the right thing. I leaned forward. You didn't. Silence. Even the music in the background seemed to hush. Then, slowly, I placed one last envelope on the table. My final card. What is this, Jason? My mom asked. A letter. To the firm where Kyle consults. Detailing all the fraud. The joint credit card. The voice recording. The financial abuse. I haven't sent it yet. Kyle turned pale. You'd ruin me. No, I said calmly. You ruined yourself. I'm just giving your consequences directions to find you. You're bluffing. Nick laughed behind me. Oh, buddy. He's not bluffing. He's been planning this for weeks. Kyle lunged across the table, grabbing for the envelope. But Marcel stepped between us like a ghost. Fast, smooth, effortless. For a man in his 60s, he moved like a shadow. I suggest, Marcel said gently, you leave now. Kyle looked at him, then at me, and then back at the rest of the table. No one moved to stop him. Not even Hannah. He stormed out. My mom finally spoke. I can't believe you'd go this far. I didn't go far, I said, turning to her. I just stopped staying silent. Hannah stood too, shakily. We're your family, Jason. You don't treat family like this. You're right, I said. I don't. But you did. And then she was gone too. Just like that. My parents stayed a few minutes longer, neither saying much. My dad stared at the receipt, my mom at her untouched plate. When they finally stood, she said, You've changed. No, I said softly. I just stopped letting you shape me. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. No more speeches. No more guilt. Just go. And they did. The door shut behind them. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy exactly. Not triumphant. Just clean. Like I'd rinsed off a film I didn't even realize had been coating my skin for decades. Nick came over, grinning. Holy man. That was surgical. I exhaled slowly. I'm just tired of letting other people write the story. Well, he said, clapping me on the back, tonight, you wrote the final chapter. We stayed for a while. Talked. Ate dessert. Laughed. And when I got home that night, I opened my notebook one last time. What do I want? I didn't need to answer it anymore. Because now I had something better. What I wouldn't accept. And that list was blank. Because I'd already erased every name that didn't belong.